Herzlich willkommen zum Podcast Creativity, Empathy, Flow. Der Podcast für KünstlerInnen, HeilerInnen und hochsensible Menschen. Ich bin Doris Kessel und ich möchte dir mit diesem Podcast ganz viel Inspiration mitgeben, damit du als Künstlerin, Heilerin und hochsensibler Mensch deinen Platz in der Welt einnehmen kannst. In dieser Podcast-Folge durfte ich die wundervolle Inette Miller interviewen. Ich habe Inette Miller vor 5,5 Jahren, als ich rausgezogen bin in die Welt, an einem sehr besonderen Ort auf Kaua'i getroffen. Diese Podcast-Folge ist auch auf Englisch. Vielleicht hast du trotzdem Lust, auch wenn du sagst, Englisch ist nicht so mein Ding, mal reinzuhören, die Energie zu fühlen oder auf YouTube zu jumpen und dir den Untertitel auf Deutsch einzustellen. Ich freue mich wahnsinnig auf dein Feedback über diese Podcast-Folge The Meaning of Aloha. Aloha, Inette. I am so happy that I'm having you here in my podcast. And I would love to, if you'd like to, introduce yourself. Who is Inette and what's your
First, aloha, Doris. For your audience, they need to know that we met on a beach on Kauai, and not just any beach, but perhaps one of the unique places on earth. It's called the Salt Pans. And for thousands of years, the native Hawaiians of the same lineage have harvested this salt during the dry times of the year. I could tell you the whole process is pretty miraculous. It's not about scraping off reefs. It's about literally having wells with shrimp that fertilize underneath. And the salt from these salt pans can never be sold. It can only be gifted. It is a very, very sacred site. So within steps of that, I met Ms. Doris Kessel, and I don't know how many years ago now, but it was, how many?
5.5 years.
5.5 years, she remembers, counting the days. And though there are many, many visitors that my husband, who is a native Hawaiian, Iokepa Hanalei Imaikalani, and I encounter on the beaches and on the land of Hawaii, this visitor was unique. She was smart. She was deep. She understood and was hungry to understand more about the teachings and the wisdom of the native Hawaiian people, as I was when I met my native husband. We recognize that, and we've all become very, very close friends at this distance. And I am simply honored, Doris, to be on your podcast today, from sitting here on Kauai, and you're sitting there in Germany, and all my windows are open. Are yours open? Is it warm enough there now? Anyway, so so you can see from what I'm wearing that it is warm. It is warm always. Let me tell you about a bit about who I am. I'm a bit schizophrenic in terms of name, because I am Inette Miller by birth, and Inette Miller in all of my lifelong writing. I have been a writer as long as I've been an adult. No, I was a writer as a child, just an unpublished one. My parents were very proud. In any case, and I am Inette Miller Imaikalani on these islands and by marriage. And it's a very special and proud name, Imaikalani. And that's a whole other story at this point. I had been a writer all my life. I had some success, and I was grateful for it. I'd had a book turned into a movie. I'd had foreign translations. I'd had all the things that you pretty much dream of as a writer. I was a journalist for many years. I was, until I was 40, I was solely a journalist, and I was a war correspondent in Vietnam. in 1970 and 1971, and your listeners can do the calculations of age because I'm not going to say it, but it's not hard to figure.
You look so much younger than you guessing.
Thank you. Thank you for your kindness. And in fact, the most recent book that I wrote that we'll talk about later is the memoir of those days in Vietnam. And I want to say to your young and older readers and listeners that I write only memoir. So I write stories that are true in my heart and soul and that are mine. They are things that I lived. I have had literary agents tell me over the years, "Oh, why would you say that? You make yourself look not so good." And I say, either you write the truth or don't bother writing memoir, call it fiction and write what you wish. I chose to write memoir. It is a way that I understand my life and the world around me. And so just to give a little plug for the most recent book, Girls Don't, to say that though I understand that in Germany, in the United States, nobody wants to hear about the Vietnam War, except let me tell you, this is the story of a young woman, 23 to 25, who, when the world says women can't do this, the biggest story around is Vietnam, but you, a journalist, better stay back behind the fence, she said no. And she put herself over there in the most macho place on this earth. And this is the story of what that looks like. It is also a love story because my boyfriend and I got married right as he got drafted, both of us bitterly against that war. We both went, he as a draftee, and his story is very much a part of this. And it was absolutely verboten to ever have a family member, a wife, anything in Vietnam during that time. He was a private. Generals couldn't have their wives there. So there was that level of duplicity during so all by way of saying, I guarantee you Girls Don't, even if you care nothing about Vietnam, will engage you. I do believe it's my best book to date. Having said that, that's most recent. That's the book I've been touring and will be touring with this year. Writer, a journalist all my life. At 40, I went through a divorce. Many of us do that. And it was painful. And I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old when I did that. Nothing was easy about that time. At that point, I said, if this is ending, if the thing that I thought was going to define my life forever is ending after 20 years, then there's really no risk that I can't take. And so I gave up salary journalism and said, I'm going to write longer stories. Editors are always cutting and shortening and, telling you what you can't do. I'm going to write my story. And that was the first story. And that was back in 86, 87. And I've never stopped since. And I just want to say that for those who are writers, if you don't write because you have to write, then don't write. And what I mean by that is, if you're writing for publication solely, if that's your only goal, you'll be disappointed. It will never satisfy you. There will be so many levels of possible brick walls, things that stop you, things that negate you. If you are writing, I used to say to my students, because I taught writing workshop around the country, around the United States, I said, if I write to understand my world and the world around me, if you, my students, have another way, a better way to understand your world and the world around you, then for goodness sakes, do that. It's not an easy one. There were times when I had small children and I worried about money all the time, which is one of the reasons I taught workshop. And it wasn't a big money maker, but it was enough to get by. I would sit there and say, okay, I've got these responsibilities of these children and I've got to earn a living and I've got to have a rental and I've got to have a house, got to have food on the table. How do I do that? And I did that. I would make lists. I would make lists of alternative things that I could do. Okay, you can do this, you could do that. You're perfectly physically able. And I would scratch them off and say, yeah, I really don't want to do that. No, I really don't want to do that. And I'd come back to the only thing I really love doing is writing. So if it supports me or it doesn't, this is my life. Find a way, Inette. And that's how it's been forever. Now, shall I keep going?
I love your passion. Just keep going. Like,
okay. So now 27 years ago, single mom for 14 years at this point. My boys are teenagers. I'm living in Portland, Oregon, and I'm about to take my first vacation without children in years. They're going to go visit their dad. And it's right before Christmas. And I call my friend, the travel agent, and she says, oh, you can't get this, you can't get that. I said, well, I was sitting next to somebody at a lecture who just got back from the island of Hawaii. What about that? That was how it was. I can't put this strongly enough. Never in my life, and I have lived for several years in Italy, and I have lived for several years in Vietnam, and I have never desired to go to Hawaii. Never in all that time.
Italy. We talked about Italy and Florence. Is it?
Yes, Firenze. Yes.
I love that so much.
Yes, love it still, dream of it still. Thought that was my life. Life is.
Then everything.
What they say that man plans and God laughs. Man plans and God laughs. The story of our lives, right?
Yeah, we have actually in Germany to laugh.
Yes, I know, because I'm a Jewish girl, for those who don't, and it's the Yiddish is very close to the German, but I can't. Yes.
Yeah, yes. And then you're going to Kauai, and then in my case, I ended up in Canada. I never wanted to go to Canada. Canada, so I went to Canada.
So here's the story. So life is going to present us with things that we didn't expect or plan. And either we're going to go, nah, that's not what I had in mind. Or we're going to go, okay, I know it looks like a great big abyss, but I am going to step off it and hope that the universe is going to support me. And doggone it, when we trust, it does. And that's the story of Grandmother's Whisper. That's the story of that book, which I was just about. So 28 years ago, I find myself Christmas morning at a Hawaiian heiau, sacred site. I know nothing about Hawaii. I know nothing. I don't know there's a Hawaiian culture. I never wanted to come to Hawaii because I thought Honolulu, tourism. I never wanted any part of that. I never traveled to be a tourist. I traveled to be a traveler. You understand. It's a difference. So there was nothing. So here I found myself there, and this woman that was sharing a house that was a stranger said, I'm going up. There's going to be a ceremony at this heiau on Christmas morning. It's not Christian. I'm a Jewish girl. What am I going to do Christmas morning? I go up with her. And that's where I met Iokepa Hanalei Maikalani. And to even begin to try to tell you the miracles that happened, that brought us together, that insisted that we be together, I can't tell it in this, but I did tell it in Grandmother's Whisper. Grandmother's Whisper is the book that is the immersion, the beginning of the immersion into the Native Hawaiian culture. For a Jewish girl from Baltimore, Maryland, who knows nothing, did not even know there was a culture, meets this man, is swept off her feet, not by just lust, as we all know what that looks like, but by the most unbelievable miracles, deep spiritual connection. I sat there on this first week with this man fighting it, saying, do you know how different we are? Do you know how unlikely we are together? And he would just laugh in my face and say, do you intimidate many men? And that was how he didn't see an impediment. I saw all the things you do or don't do. I've known him 10 days. I have 2 children that depend on me. I have a big, wonderful house overlooking the city in Portland, Oregon. I am a fairly successful writer. He has, 10 months before, had a spiritual epiphany This extremely wealthy man from Washington State had a visitation from his grandmothers, which is why this is called Grandmother's Whisper, from his grandmother, great grandmother, and great great grandmother, who gave him 2 weeks to relinquish everything he had accumulated in his entire life, to sell nothing, to give everything away, a house on a lake, 7 cars and a hot rod, and $2 million liquid, gone in 2 weeks, arrives on Kauai with a ticket to get there and a tote bag this big with a swimsuit, some t-shirts, and blue jeans. That's the man I met 10 months later to begin a walk of faith and an immersion into his culture, the authentic culture, not the tourist version of it. In those 10 months, he had nothing but this. He walked the land every day, 10 miles a day, to feel the energy, to feel. He was told he would never have a drink or a smoke or a cuss word ever again in his life. They were simply taken away. And since his job was a business in heavy construction, that was pretty much a big part of it. Gone. There was a new man that walked these and continues to walk 28 years later. It is 100% a surrender and is 100% a walk of faith. I was to enter that, and I could not even imagine. And so Grandmother's Whisper isn't always a feel-good book. It's a book of a painful immersion, a painful letting go, not just of things, but of my identity. I wasn't a writer anymore. I wasn't a successful anything anymore. I was simply, why was I here? I fell in love. I believed in what he said. It was, anyway, how's that for an introduction, Doris? Have I talked the time away?
It's like I could just like start crying right away because I mean we met and then I remember exactly the moment you're standing on my side and you said, I feel like you need to read that book. And then I read that book, The Grandmother's Whisperer. And I cried every single page, even if I didn't understand every single word. I just like felt it. Like, you wrote about the truth, that there is an ultimate, I feel like there is an ultimate truth everyone just like knows. You wrote about like not hoarding things. This is what we do on this planet. We hoard things we don't need and then we throw it away and like we like destroying the planet. Like, that life showed me since that time that everything you really need will be there right on time, not any second before. So
Yes.
like this was like such an inspiration, like that, that living from breath to breath, that what does aloha mean, which I have my little tattoo here on my wrist that reminds me, which is like a lifestyle. And as you said, it was for me, do you remember that I had that horrible accident on Kauai the year before, that I smashed my kneecap on Hopi Falls? And, I was like that, I wouldn't say famous triathlete, but I was successful. I had my titles and I was fast and I built up my identity of like, I don't know, that about achievement and like have to do something to be someone, like, like my career and money and material stuff. And then I felt like after that accident, I have to go to Kauai for 3 months and to let go. I will remember that moment. And then I was standing in the kitchen of our kitchen. I was married and I was like, wondering which stuff I should take or leave here. And there was this voice, and the voice said, just leave everything here. Everywhere you are, you're going to have everything you need. And since that moment, it happened that way. And it's a painful one because, yeah, it's like you're losing your whole identity. I'm not the triathlete anymore. I'm not a label. I'm just like, me, my heart, my soul, my purpose, which
Oh,
so
yes.
deeply
Yes.
connected to like nature and the planet and like to do something really meaningful. And if when you're walking that path, you can't go back.
No, isn't that the kicker? You can't go back.
You can't go back. It does not work. I tried it last year. I came back here and I tried to reconnect with things that I used to do, and it didn't work. It didn't make me happy. There was no passion anymore. It's like it was like, okay, I do it, like I'm functioning. So yeah, please go ahead. I can just like resonate with everything you're talking about.
And I with you. Exactly. I just wanted to keep saying bravo, bravo. I want to add that the things that say hoard, the things that we carry, when you live the life that we lived for 17 years without a house, I don't think I mentioned that this immersion was 17 years living in tents and sleeping in cars, taking nothing from anyone, no government, no churches, none of that. Giving and taking became reciprocal, became what we live as humans. But everything that we hoarded or that we thought we needed became a burden to carry in that aging car. That car could only carry so much, and it carried everything in our lives. And because my husband is compulsively clean and all of that, it always looked immaculate. But that car, decayed, and we had no money to fix it. And it was a trunk, and he wouldn't put things on the back seat except for an English dictionary and a Hawaiian dictionary. That was all that sat on our back seat. He wouldn't make it look like we looked like people's vision of what a homeless people, because this was by choice. This was something we had chosen and something for us to understand. It gave us a huge degree of compassion for those who don't have that choice, who live this. But it is to this day, if I buy a new sweater, if I am able to buy a new sweater, then an old sweater will be given away to someone. That is the policy.
Same. Something new arrives, something old has to go.
Has to go. Has to go. And and it's funny because we have been given this house to live in now. This house for the last years, and Iokepa has turned what was a jungle into a thriving fruit farm that we sell nothing, that we take the fruit from this land, and it is bountiful, back to the parks where we lived in tents for the homeless and the others and our neighbors and friends as well. But it is totally so this house was given with no expectation of anything. And to this day, I own only our clothes and art that has been given to us by friends. I'm looking at some of it right now by Native Americans over here. But all the art by friends that have been gifted that are hanging on the walls. I mean, if we had to leave, I guess the art would stay here for whoever comes next. It is that life. And we have been rewarded in more ways. And believe me, there are times, to make it sound as though it's one easy journey and there's never doubts and there's never lack of faith. I've often, when we speak because Iokepa and I now for the last 17 years, since the first Grandmother's Whisper came out, we speak around the United States to groups that invite us. We do no solicitation and we charge for nothing. But we do these speaking and these book tours. And gosh, I don't know where I lost my train of thought, where I was heading into for that one. I apologize. Oh,
take your time.
No, I'm trying. It's fine. We can go on because I don't remember. It'll come back later in another form.
Later. So yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to do. I did come back. Okay. So faith. I stand in front of these audiences and I say, this man, this Iokepa Imaikalani, his faith is like this. And I realize there's no visual, so I'm going, it's a fist, it's solid, it doesn't waver, okay? And there's another visual I'm going to have to explain here. And for me, it looks like this. Picture a graph line that's going on gradually up, but then does a deep dip. And then it goes gradually up and does a deep dip. Okay, that's my faith. And I think that's most of our faith. So that it is an upward trajectory. Our faith gets stronger, but there are dips, and the dips get less deep and less frequent. And that is the goal for us. Perfection doesn't exist in human form. So the goal is simply to become more faithful, to trust more, to understand there are times when we go, ah,
Yes.
and I do that far more often than I've ever heard Io Kepa do that. But that's my journey. And all of our journeys are our journeys, and all of us are given gifts in this life. And it is about using those gifts, because those gifts are from our Creator. And to not use them, I always say, is to spit in the face of the Creator. Not a good thing. I don't know if that translates to German, but something just disgusting in the face of the Creator if you don't use the gifts you're given. Your gifts are not the same, and our faith is not always solid. We have doubts. Our life's work is for those doubts to become less devastating and less frequent. That's it. That is it. Use what we're given. And it was Goethe that said, and I'm probably not saying it right. I apologize for my German pronunciations. I don't speak German at all. But it was Goethe that said something very close to that there is, if you step off of that mountainside, if you step off of that cliff, the universe will come and support you in ways you can't imagine. But you must take that step, which means we can't be paralyzed by fear. Fear is so the enemy of faith. Fear is how we're controlled. Fear is what is happening in my dear country right now that's paralyzing so many people. Fear keeps us from doing what the Creator put us on earth to do. So your Goethe said, take that step. And that speaks to my heart and speaks to my journey.
Yeah. So I thought about, thank you for your inspiration and your impulses and your words. And we're talking about the Hawaiian culture, and then you met a wonderful man, and you've been teaching 10 years, and you lived at beaches, and you learned a lot about like faith and trust in life, and the things will be given right exactly at the right time. And I thought about giving that podcast the title, The Meaning of Aloha. Would you like to say something about what does aloha means for you?
I certainly would. Aloha means, and it's aloha. Aloha means in the presence of the Creator into every breath. And so that when I say aloha to Doris right now, I am not saying hello or goodbye. There are Hawaiian words for that. I am acknowledging that I see the Creator in this woman across from me right here. So aloha, not aloha, that's tourist baloney. It is that. And let me speak a little bit about the Native Hawaiian culture. It's interesting because typically when my husband and I speak together, I read from my book and tell stories that we have shared, and he speaks of the ancient culture. But since I'm here alone, I'm going to take the stage here and say that this ancient culture was a matriarchal culture. The women had the last and final word for all that happened. Men recognized that they were half of their mothers, that they carried that balance, and that only changed when others came with their ideas of competition. And from that, men lost that connection to their feminine side, subjugated women, put women into second place, stopped listening to the truth that is feminine, and wars began. So my husband would say, matriarchal culture is the answer to all that ails. And you need to, there are men and there are men, and I'm in a way sorry, I'm going to have to try to represent. And maybe when you read Grandmother's Whisper, if you read Grandmother's Whisper, or go to the website that we share, you'll have an opportunity to hear his chants, to get some sense of him. This is an incredibly male man. There is nothing, you would never look at this man and say effeminate. And yet he is absolutely, totally knows his role, that he said men were in the back protecting, were security but the women were the deciders. And there was something within Native Hawaiian culture that was authentically called ho'oponopono. It was a mediation technique led only by women, and it does not, there are now books written by Westerners that speak about it's a way of self-healing. It is not a way of self-anything. It is 100% communal. You can't do ho'oponopono outside of community. That is the defining thing. I know I'm opposing, what some people believe because they've read it, but I feel so strongly, and we've had so many people come to our events having read something that is not indigenous. Indigenous is women sat in the circle and found consensus, found a way to consensus, and there was no war for 13,000 years here. It's something that was brought. So that's the culture that my husband speaks of. That's the culture that he works and has worked for the last 28 years to return. He doesn't work alone. There are many, he works alone, but there are many Native Hawaiians who are involved in the language, who are involved in the hula, and hula was never about entertainment. Hula was only a spiritual practice. If you sat with the woman as she danced and she transcended and you were blessed, she took you with her. Only when Westerners came did it become something else. And so there's been, for 150 years, until 1972, missionaries made it illegal to speak Hawaiian in public in any situation for 150 years until 1972. It was illegal to name a Native Hawaiian child a Hawaiian first name. It had to be Christian. It was illegal to do the original hula. It could only be the modern hula because it was too suggestive to them. This is just a few of the things. And in 1962, the law was removed. But by then, 3 generations of people, of parents, had refused to teach their children Hawaiian for fear they would go out and speak it in public and be jailed and punished in their schools. And they were. And so in 72, there was a whole renaissance of culture. But boy, has it been an uphill battle. Each thing, and Eokep was part of that. And each piece is the language, the return of the original names. Every hillside has a Hawaiian name. Every bend in the river has a Hawaiian name. Every tree. And they've been I look out on this mountain. I look out where I'm sitting right now at a mountain called Haupu. It means to remember. And do you know what the Westerners here call it? The colonizers here call it? They call it Black Mountain. Eokepa goes, Black Mountain? What? It's Haupu, to remember where you came from, to remember what you're born knowing. Eokepa says, I'm not a teacher. He's not a teacher. I'm here to remind you of what you were born knowing. All of us. He over and over says, it's not just me and my culture. It's not just me and my ancestors. Your ancestors are waiting for you. Your culture's there, but we live in a noisy and a distracting world that takes us from that. Doris and I were speaking earlier about our smartphones, our computers. We fight to be, I feel for my life in these last 28 years, without those things for 17 years, I feel privileged. I don't feel deprived. I know things I couldn't have known if I stayed plugged in. Yeah. And so I know, and I say to our audiences, look, you have jobs, you work in a world. I understand. Please don't be hard on yourself about that. Find ways to return to those places that you already have. Nobody has to give it to you. You don't need to go to workshops. You know it. Get quiet. Trust it. Trust it. When you ask, Eokepa says, we all have a fingerprint and we all have a voice that's distinctly our own. Ask your prayers out loud. We say to the grandmothers, say to your creator, to whatever you, to their universe, speak it out loud. They're waiting to hear your voice. When you get your answer, you don't get to say, that's not what I wanted. You don't, and we do that. They say go left, and you go, but I really want to go right. Yes. Don't get to do that. That breaks the promise. The asking is the act of faith. So here's the faith. I have asked. Now, when the answer comes, and it comes in millions of ways, trust the answer. Trust yourself. I still get lectures from my husband who says, when I'm in a place of deep doubt and frustration, he says, after all that you've lived, after all that's been done, how can you possibly doubt? And I say, I can. I can. Right now, it feels horrible. The next day it doesn't. Maybe the next minute it doesn't. Maybe the next breath it doesn't. But, that's a fact. That's human. We're human. We are not. We are. Aloha. I recognize the creator within you, human Doris.
Well, hello. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's like, wow, like the whole Hawaiian culture and the history and everything touched me so deeply. I will never forget the moment when I came back after the first time I was on Kauai was 2004. And then I came back in 2018, and I just want to feel. I was just there. I wanted to feel the wonderful energy. I wanted to do, I didn't want to read or to talk or to go to specific places. I just wanted to be in the present moment. So
what's it? I mean, Iokepa says when people step off the plane, nobody's asking you to give up yourself, but allow the opening so that you can don't try to pull. People move here and they don't just bring all of their possessions, they bring all of the life that they had and try very hard to recreate it. And that means they're closed to all the wonderful, and I'm not talking about weather and beaches and oceans. I'm talking about that which resides from the ancestors that occupied this, the grandmothers that left for us so much. So unless you make a little space there, there's nowhere for that to go.
Yeah, I remember when when I'm in Hawaii or especially on Kauai, I feel like I don't need anything, just like a summer dress, and like I feel like me, like more me. And of course, I live in Germany and I'm here and my journey, like I reduced all my stuff to a one luggage and the backpack. And then I texted you and I thought, I think this is a little bit less. I need more
that is the other thing that Iokepa says over and over again.
And as you say, like for me, it's life also like to explore and really what makes me happy. And now I would say when I buy things, it's so much more, I'm so much more aware how it feels, and I realize more and more what really makes me happy, or when I feel like I need those things, like when you are traveling and you're coming back and then you see all your friends what they have, you feel like the biggest loser in the whole town because you don't have the house and the car.
Okay, a little bit of a caveat here. Because yes, Iokepa gave away everything. And yes, everything was stripped from me. I didn't give it, it was taken. And yes, but that was for his journey and my journey. He's very clear that having wealth is a gift from the creator as well. It is what you do it and how you do it and how you relate to it. It isn't you, it is a gift to use. That is all. I don't want to say that everyone should strip away everything and live this. And it is not what it is. Again, emphasize all of our journeys are different. All of our gifts are different. And you know what? You did exactly what you were supposed to do. And that is, and I'm not talking about things, I'm talking about people the wonderful people who come to Kauai, to Hawaii, and the wonderful people who take in what is there. And then they say, oh, I can't leave because this has made me so me. And Iokepa says over and over again, even to those who've lived here for 20 years and now are moving, we've lost a dozen friends this summer who've lived here for 30 years. And they were good friends because it takes time to make good friends. And I feel that absence. But Iokepa has always said to them, you know, life takes you where it takes you. We honor you. We love you. We want you to do what's good for you. And what you do is you take what you learned and took from Hawaii and you take it back to Germany and you live that. That's what you've been given.
Yeah. And it totally feels like my journey. And I feel, if I look back, I'm not rich. I don't have any big titles or whatever anymore in triathlon. I feel so free. I feel just like I feel that freedom. And I'm really a free person and I can go wherever I want if I want to. I decided last year I want to come back here and I have my base to heal from like all the trauma stuff that came up from my childhood. So, but this is all about, for me, is life. This is one of my highest values, is to be free. We are free people. Yeah, we are here to be free. And what happened with the colonization to Hawaii, this is not freedom.
No,
this is
it's not.
And
there's
yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole other story. And the story is that it can only return, Iokepa says, in the way it was given. And Queen Liliuokalani had at her hands offered military troops offered from other countries, and she refused them. She said, I will never shed my people's blood over this. So the land it was generously not defended in that way. It will only come back in a spiritual and honest way. And that is, I mean, it won't be political. Hawaiians weren't politicians, but the grandmothers say that what will happen on the Hawaiian Islands will be a stepping stone for cultures around the world to emulate. And I believe that to be true. I believe it is already becoming true. And that's where Iokepa and my work is. And just for your women readers, I want to be clear that though I am following a path that is my husband's, I am with a man who absolutely insisted that I write this book, Grandmother's Whisper, and tell my story that he says over, and this entire year has been a year of me out there alone, talking. Even back home here, had event, boy, even Saturday, another event. That's me. And he's sitting in the audience, just applauding and pushing me when I say, oh, I'm happy sitting home, reading a book and writing. I am an introvert. I don't want to be in that crowd. I don't want to. And he says, you have to. So, yeah, it's we have defined in this relationship something else, which is I am a Jewish girl from Baltimore, Maryland. He is a native Hawaiian man from another world entirely. And this journey has not asked either of us to give up any single part of ourselves for this journey, for this relationship. It is about respecting and honoring that he's Native Hawaiian, that I am not, that I am Jewish, that he is not. He goes to my synagogues for all of my high holidays and fasts with me on the appropriate places, and we light Sabbath candles on Friday nights together. And I live this life that is a Native Hawaiian life. And sometimes when we speak, people say, oh, Inette, why didn't you take a Hawaiian name? Or Inette, why didn't you? And I go, I was 51 years old when I met him, 28 years ago, guys. I was 51 years old and I was already pretty formed and I pretty much knew who I was. I wasn't a kid. So this life of relationship isn't about relinquishing who we are in order to honor the other. It is about enjoying those differences, supporting, agreeing with it. Nothing about our differences is in opposition to the other. Nothing. There's not been a moment. And we have deep conversations about this stuff, obviously, and there's a world out there and we're aware of it, and it enters but we also know that it's not a political thing for either of us at this point. It's got to be something else. The changes in this earth can't come from war, can't come from politics, can't do that. So, and Doris, you and I both, I'm just going to make this acknowledgement. We are speaking this on the day of the American presidential election. And my first reaction, I said to Doris when we scheduled it, was, oh no, how can I do that? And my next was, thank you, God. What a wonderful distraction. I don't have to think about any of that when it's coming at me in every direction today. I can be in Germany today with this wonderful woman.
I can be in Kaua'i.
You can be in Kaua'i. Oh, you're beautiful. You've only gotten more beautiful, Doris.
Thank you. You're beautiful.
In all ways.
Oh, yes. I feel like there's nothing to add. Would love to talk to you for hours and decades and until my whole life. And you inspired me so much. I mean, I remember the moment when I met you and I felt like, wow, why are you touching me so deeply? And
it is reciprocal.
Thank you so much for all your kind words all the years. I send you voice messages when I was like deep down. I felt like I can't go on. And it felt like really like a warm touch all the time. So thank you.
Well, for those who can't see this, I am sending Doris a kiss right now. And mahalo to you for the honor of being on your podcast. All blessings. Ho'omaikai, blessings to you and to your listeners. And aloha.
Yes. Is there anything you want to add or to let the people know what's really important for you to spread out into the world?
I feel very complete. I feel very satisfied. And I feel comfortable that my last word be ho'omaikai, blessings.
I feel complete too. Thank you so much. And for all the people who want to read your wonderful books, I'm going to put them in the show notes. And you can click the link and buy them right away. And the website. And
mahalo.
Yeah. Mahalo to you. Just like, I feel like, yeah. Now I have to let you go again.
Just for a while. I'm here.
Have a really great day.
Mahalo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ich danke dir fürs Lauschen und würde mich sehr über 5 Sternchen oder ein Like freuen. Wenn du dich mit mir verbinden möchtest, findest du mich auf Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn oder auf meiner Webseite doriskessel.com.